What is the worst thing you have done to get revenge on someone? My dad married a woman that had kids my age. One was a daughter that would get into my stuff and steal my clothes. She also had the largest collection of cassette tapes I'd ever seen, a whole double-wall cabinet full of them. When my best blouse went missing along with my new gym shorts, this was 1983 and I didn't have many clothes at all, I managed to lay my hands on a reel-to-reel magnet tape degausser. Was a 20-pound electromagnet and I waited until no one was home, plugged it in and ran it well across all of her tapes, the entire rack. Took 15 minutes to give the whole cabinet the thrice over, and a few days later I hear her complaining to one of her friends on the phone that her tape deck was not working as none of her tapes were playing well anymore. When I was in the 6th grade someone made fun of me for being short, so I told my friend to pee on him. And he did it. My friend peed on the kid's back. That was a nice friend. 6th grade was weird for me. I worked for Lady Satan when I was a young single mum. She was completely abusive but I desperately needed the money to provide for my daughter so I had to stay. As soon as my student loan came in I just quit coming into work without explanation and after being a very reliable employee. That day was the day she was supposed to catch a flight for Mexico. She had to cancel her vacation so the store would stay open. I regret nothing. My brother wouldn't stop eating my food out of the fridge so I got up really early, went to the shop, bought his favorite newspaper and emailed him all the answers to the crosswords so he wouldn't be able to do it in his lunch break. Sorry, but that's just how we roll in England. I cut her out of my life. I still own the house we bought, really I bought it on my credit. I kept her car, my name was on the loan and not hers. I made a bunch of new single friends, several of them gorgeous, and I am still friends with her family on Facebook. Especially her brother. Dude is super cool and I enjoyed hanging out with him. I have paid down my debts, taken up golf, lost weight, and stayed single for over a year just to make sure I work through my issues so I don't take any of the crap I was left with into my next relationship. She had a new boyfriend 1 month after she moved out. She's living with her parents and struggling to make ends meet. Her family is absolutely furious with her because they loved me. They message me on Facebook regularly to check up on me. All of our mutual friends have stopped talking to her. Going through the divorce, I set aside my emotions. I packed and shipped her belongings out to her. I kept any emotion hidden from her throughout the process and the day she left I put her suitcases in her friend's car and said see ya and then walked back into the house. My friends and family tell me all the time I should have tried to stick it to her, but honestly, I wanted to be rid of her, and I wanted to be proud of how I handled things. I am. I didn't do any of it to spite her. Everything I have done is for me. The best revenge is to live well. I had 2 terrible roommates, they ate all my food, never cleaned up after themselves and listen to what I assume is Ethiopian music loudly at all hours of the night. They are Ethiopian. But by far my biggest gripe was cranking the heat to 85 no matter the temperature outside. When I turn it down to 75, one of them flipped out about me making him sick. And when I brought up said cranking of heat was costing us a lot in utilities I was told no, it's leaving your TV on all night. I am an electrical engineer I know. So after sweating like a whore in church for a month I decided it was time to act. I started by taking the face off our thermostat and adjusting the indicators so that the selected and room temperature were set at 85 even though the real setting was 75. I then added a large amount of hot sauce to the bag of chips I know they would eat when I went to sleep that night, and as a final measure the fuse box to our apartment is in my room so when they decide to play loud music at 3 AM I just flip the breaker. When I was little, there was this guy in a big white truck who would speed through my street, trying to run over the neighborhood cat every day. One day I was petting the cat off the road while waiting for the bus, and I left my backpack out in the road a bit. This guy ran over my backpack on purpose. I was so mad. I waited a few days and put a cinder block in one of those paper grocery bags and folded the top over and left it a bit up the road, out of the way of traffic but just enough on the road that the asshat in the truck might not be able to resist running it over. Sure enough, the guy in the truck came roaring down my road, saw the bag, and ran it over. He flipped his truck and landed upside down in the vacant lot next to us. I ran over, got the torn bag, and kicked the broken remnants of the cinder block into the tall grass. My neighbor's mom called the cops. They came and he got arrested for DUI. Apparently the guy had a drinking issue and the whole cab was full of liquor bottles. Never saw the guy again. When I was 6, my friend and I, we'll call him Tyler, were playing in his yard. He told me to look up and see something in the sky. There was nothing there. He tricked me and then called me gullible. I wouldn't stand for this. Later that day we were on the swing set and I noticed that his parents got rid of his old sandbox. I figured they probably didn't tell him so he wouldn't get upset. I showed Tyler that it had disappeared and he was pretty confused. I explained to him that the grass was gone where it used to be because his parents had buried it there. He said there was no way they'd do that, and proceeded to ask his dad. His dad was on the phone and said yes to someone on the line, and Tyler thought he said yes about the sandbox burial. After I convinced him, I decided to go home for lunch. Later that day, my mom got a call from his mom. Turns out Tyler was digging holes in his yard all day in an attempt to find his sandbox. That showed him who was gullible. Slept with my ex-chef's best friend, on New Year's Eve, in her parents' house, with her passed out downstairs. Woke up the next morning, borrowed $100 from her, and promptly left to catch my flight for a cruise in the Bahamas with my family. 2 days later, when we finally got to a port with cell reception, I had probably 150 missed calls, 300 TXTs, and 20 voicemails. In my defense, she was a whore, and her friend was gorgeous. My mom and I got in a fight, so she went in her room upstairs. About an hour later, a Jehovah's Witness knocked on the door and asked if they could talk to someone. I told my mom there was someone important at the door she had to talk to. They talked at my kitchen table for 2 hours because she would feel bad if she kicked him out. I hated my college roommate, mostly because she was a fat, slobby, inconsiderate person. There were multiple things, but one I really hated was that she would not stop watching TV, ever, at all, even at midnight/1 am when I had a 7 a.m. class. It wasn't even good TV. It was all touched by an Angel, Full House, and other terrible sitcoms. I ignored all her passive-aggressive actions, but I couldn't handle the TV anymore. I cut the little wire inside the coax cable and then screwed it back into the wall. I then went to class. I came back and she was crying on the phone to her mom explaining about the cable. I only heard one side of the conversation, but I think the mom was trying to explain it could be an accident and roommate was insistent I did it. I changed, took a shower, and went to bed. It was 10 p.m. and I was just back from my last class and had a 7 a.m. class the next day. I slept really well with no sound. Wish I had been ballsy enough to do something to her ancient mechanical keyboard. Roommate and I pretty much never spoke again. I knew this arrogant dickhead guy who thought he was so cool. He treated his girl like shit and everyone else like they were nobodies. I liked his girlfriend, though, so I made friends with him with the intention of taking her from him. I figured since I was a nicer person and better looking that my charm would win her over. It took a year to earn enough to pay for a car. I bought the car and called her to tell her I finally did it and I'd be over right away if she wanted the first ride in it. We talked, we got along great, she already knew I had a crush on her. We went to dinner and talked more, and I drove her to and from school for the next week. Prom night came along and she called him and told him she was washing her hair. I kid you not, she actually told him she was washing her hair. We didn't go to prom, but we went out to a nice dinner and then drove into the desert, where I danced with her on the roof of the car. Dented it a bit, didn't care, just climbed inside and punched the dents out from the inside. We dated 2 more years in high school and then she decided she wanted to date college guys. I had a year left. We didn't talk for 5 years. When I got out of the military, She was working at a bank and she searched for my name in her bank computer after she saw me wave at her in the bank. She found I had just opened the account. She called me, I came right over to catch up. We've been married 19 years. When I moved into my apartment, my neighborhood was a total beast to me, coming on all aggressive about the internet we shared, ignoring me in the hallways and generally making me feel unwelcome. He also made several off-color remarks about Irish people. He was English. Eventually he ran into money trouble, and found himself unable to even ask for help. When he was finally evicted, I swooped in, told the landlord I needed the extra space and could I rent his flat. I turned it into an Airbnb rental, and now basically live rent-free, plus have total control over who my neighbors are. This story is also the exact opposite of the image Airbnb wants to create in its advertising, which is awful, but still. I once added a half-pound of weight to one tire of an asshole co-worker's car. At 25 miles per hour the car was bouncing violently. He had to get the car towed and the mechanic charged him a few $1,000s to fix it. And by fix it, I mean he took the weights off that one wheel. I was 16 and just had started my new job at a local Red Lobster. Being the new kid, everyone messed with me, but the expo was a real ass. He would make me do his job and make fun of me. I really needed the job. He would bully me and blame mistakes he made on me. I really needed the job because my girlfriend was pregnant and we were both still in high school. I would bring my lunch and he would eat it and laugh. We had to leave our lunch on the top shelf. He almost always ate my lunch. Most of the time I would bring Taco Bell because it was cheaper than eating at RL with the employee discount. One day I had the runs and I went to the bathroom as soon as I came to work. I had some disposable gloves in my pocket from the night before and I had brought my lunch in with me since I was in a rush. I had a brilliant idea and decided to shit in a glove and use it as a cake bag to fill up my burrito. I wiped my butt, and went out, clocked in and set my burrito on the shelf like I normally did. As always, within about 15 minutes, he was eating my lunch. After about eating 3/4 he said, "Hey, new guy. Stop getting the burritos with the guac on them." I did this for the remainder of the week. He ate my shit for a few days. After that week, never again did he eat my burritos cause I would always tell him, I had the guac once. 2 years later he got promoted and fired me along with a few other co-workers he didn't care for. During the exit interview, he did my interview. The last question he asked if there was anything I would like to tell him. In a very polite manner, I asked him, "Did I not let you eat my burritos?" He said yes, until you started adding guac to them. I told him it wasn't guac, it was shit, and walked out. I could hear him yelling and he ran out as I drove away. Some of my friends that still worked there told me he went to the bathroom and was puking after I left. They wondered why. I simply told them the truth. There was this girl named Haley who was dating a good friend of mine for around a year or so. I never really knew her, but would get nothing but bad vibes because my good friend was a lot less happy ever since she showed up, which was not cool with me. One New Year's she went to a party with him, and proceeded to give another guy a handjob after my friend passed out. After he told me this, he also admitted this wasn't the first time she'd done this, and had actually given a few other guys handjobs at other parties over the last year. Because of this, me and my group of friends began affectionately referring to Haley as Handjob Haley. Fast forward a month or so, my friends and I, excluding the friend that was cheated on, were bored sitting around talking about whatever. Handjob Haley came up in conversation and how we should take revenge for our good pal, who had broken up with her thankfully. So we took thousands of pieces of paper / tore them up into little note-sized pieces, and wrote, "Handjob Haley's famous handjobs. This coupon is good for one free handjob." We also included her phone number. We then broke into our old high school overnight and stuffed them in every locker. This was a school with 2,800 kids. Needless to say, she had to change her number because she was getting blown up in texts / calls. I need to preface this. I am not spiteful. I'm really not. These old roommates of mine, well, they were nearly responsible for my death. For some reason, every time there were dirty dishes in the kitchen, they all assumed they were mine. I guess that may be part of being the only man among 3 girls. So we made this deal, that I would take out the trash in exchange for them washing my dishes, which I assumed, since I generally washed all of my dishes, not to mention most of theirs, would at least result in them not bitching at me about their own dirty dishes. I was wrong. On top of that, every goddamn weekend, there would be 25-50-ish people at my house, as one of the girls worked at a bar and insisted on throwing giant parties. So there was always tons of trash. Not to mention between their boyfriends and the random dudes they were all sleeping with, any given night there were 2 to 5 random dudes in and out of my house, making even more of a mess. Anyway, I digress. The last few months we lived together, they started just leaving all these effing bags full of used kitty litter by the front door leading out the apartment. Apparently, because they wanted me to take them out with the trash, and for a long time I did. But they just kept bitching at me about never taking the trash out enough seriously. There was just so much of it, I had to start taking it multiple times a day, and how they were always doing my dishes, which in reality the opposite was true. And then they legitimately were almost the cause of my death. So one day I packed up all my shit when nobody was paying attention and moved out. But at that point, I just really needed petty revenge for the first time in my life. So I started by taking all of their toothbrushes and scrubbing the toilet with them. Then, I went to the bags and bags of kitty litter. Took out my knife and poked a tiny hole in the bottom of every bag but one. I figured when and if those bitches ever got around to taking it out, they would enjoy a floor covered in that stinky shit. TL, Doctor lived with bitches who made me clean up after them all the time. Moved out and left them a giant mess of kitty litter. I had a headmaster at the local junior high who was big on working the little farm at the school. Most Saturdays, he would call off classes to plant corn, bit of paddy, and banana plants as he saw fit. And he would beat the crap out of us in a whim. In our group was funny prankster classmate who had inexhaustible amount of pranks up his sleeves. So one Saturday, the headmaster, as expected, asked us to huddle a group of us in a circle. We knew the ritual, so were all ready to pick the little burrs, the mini dart-like seeds of a local weed, that would stick to your trousers/pants/any clothing, and prick your legs to irritation and beyond. So the headmaster's solution was to use this little kids to pick those out before calling it a day. As we start picking the little darts, this witty guy looks at my face, winks at me, and in one clean sweep, yanks the headmaster's pants down to a heap, along with the underwear. The headmaster took a full moment to realize what had happened, all in his Ened glory. Next thing I hear is "you beatards." And off we went laughing for about a week, and it was the story of the school. And for some weird reason, the beating never came. Never did we ever pick the burrs on his trousers again.